The bathroom in my aunt's house in Holmes County had a corner behind the toilet tank that nobody looked at for 11 years. When she finally pulled the tank away from the wall to fix a slow leak, the drywall behind it was black. Not grey, not spotted, black. Soft enough that her finger went through it without any pressure at all. She stood there, and she told me later that the smell hit her before her eyes did, something sour and wet that she said she'd smelled once before, in a root cellar that had flooded the spring she was 19. I am going to tell you what she used on that wall, and I am going to tell you why it worked when the spray bottle under her sink had already failed her twice. But first, I want you to remember one number: 1947. Hold on to it. I will come back to it, and when I do, it is going to change how you think about everything you have been told about cleaning products. Stay with me to the end, because I am going to give you the exact ratio my grandmother used, written on the back of a feed sack, in pencil, in her own hand. And I have never once seen it printed in a book, a magazine, or on any label you can buy today. You already know the smell I am talking about. You may not have named it yet. It is faint in the morning and stronger by evening, and it lives somewhere between the bathroom and the laundry room, and you have sprayed something blue or something with bleach in it directly onto the tile, and for 3 or 4 days it seemed to work, and then it came back in the exact same spot, sometimes darker than before. That is not bad luck. That is not a cleaning mistake. That is the product doing exactly what it was built to do, which is less than what you think it does. Tell me in the comments where your spot is. Not the whole story, just the spot. Under the sink, behind the washer, the corner of the shower, the windowsill in the kids' room. Just that. I read every single one, and I promise you, by the end of this video, you are going to understand why that spot keeps winning. Here is the part nobody wants to say to your face. Bleach does not kill mold at the root. It bleaches the colour out of what you can see on the surface, and it leaves behind a wall, a piece of grout, a sheet of drywall that is still damp, still organic, still exactly what a spore needs to start again. You spray it, it goes white, you feel like you won, and 3 or 4 weeks later the same shadow is climbing back up the same corner. Same bottle, same spot, same result. And somehow you are still losing ground. There is no money in telling you that the $8 spray on the shelf only treats what your eyes can see. A bottle that actually solved the problem the first time would only need to be bought once. A bottle that treats the surface and leaves the root gets bought again in 6 weeks, and again after that, for as long as you own the house. Nobody built an industry around a 5-cent fix. They built one around a problem that returns. We didn't call what we used a method. It was just how it was done. Because in a community where you could not run to a store for a chemical solution every time something went wrong in a damp corner of the house, you learned instead what actually changed the surface a mold needed to survive. Not the smell of it, not the colour of it, the moisture inside the material itself and the alkaline balance of what it was feeding on. My grandmother was not a chemist, and she would have laughed at the word. But she understood, the way any woman who ran a household without a hardware store nearby had to understand, that mold is not stubborn because it is strong. It is stubborn because most of what people use against it is designed to look like it worked, rather than actually change the conditions underneath. There was a woman 2 farms over from where I grew up, named Ruth, who had raised 8 children in a house built in 1889. A house with a stone foundation that sweated every spring when the frost came out of the ground. Ruth had black mold in that cellar for going on 30 years, on and off. And she was the one who taught my mother the paste, because store solutions were not something anyone in that community reached for first. Not out of stubbornness, but because they simply were not part of daily life the way they are for you and me now. I drove out to see that cellar myself 2 years ago, long after I had left the community, because I wanted to know if what my mother told me was true, or if it was just a story that got better with each telling. The stone was still there. The corner where the mold used to bloom every March was pale, dry, and had been for over a decade, Ruth's daughter told me, ever since her mother started treating it twice a year instead of once. I stood in that cellar and I counted the stones on that back wall, and I stopped counting somewhere past 50, because it did not matter anymore. What mattered was that the wall was clean, and it had been clean for years, without a single can of anything store-bought ever touching it. So here is what actually happens, in plain language, because chemists have a word for what this paste does, and the word is hygroscopic, which just means it pulls moisture toward itself instead of leaving it behind in the material. Thirsty is the right word. That is really all it is. It is thirsty for the same water the mold is feeding on, and when something thirstier than the mold moves into the mold does not have anything left to grow on. The base of it is plain white vinegar, the kind that comes in a gallon jug for a few dollars at any grocery store. Undiluted, straight from the bottle. Vinegar is acidic enough to break down the surface of a mold colony, but on its own it evaporates too fast on a porous material like drywall or grout to reach what is underneath. That is where the second ingredient comes in, and it is one you almost certainly already own. Borax. Plain borax powder, the kind sold in the laundry aisle in a box that has looked the same for decades. You mix roughly 2 tablespoons of borax into 2 cups of hot water until it dissolves completely. No clumps left. Then you add about a half cup of the white vinegar to that mixture once it has cooled slightly. That is the whole base. You do not need gloves for this one, though I would not put my face directly over the bowl while it's still steaming, simply out of respect for your own nose. You put it in a spray bottle. You shake it before every use, and you saturate the moldy area completely. Not a light mist, a full soaking pass. And you let it sit without wiping it for a minimum of 1 hour. The waiting is the part almost everyone skips, and it is the part that actually matters most. A spray bottle gives people the illusion of speed, and speed is the enemy of a job like this one. The borax needs time to draw the moisture out of the material, and the vinegar needs time to keep breaking down the surface the mold is anchored to. After the hour, you take a stiff brush, not a soft rag, and you scrub the area in a circular motion until what comes off is a grey paste, rather than a black smear. Then you spray it again, lightly this time, and you leave it. You do not rinse it. You do not wipe it dry. You let it air dry completely, and that residue left behind on the surface is what keeps a colony from establishing itself again for months at a time. Now, I want to be honest with you about something because I did every single one of these mistakes myself before I understood what was going wrong. I used to dilute the vinegar with water to make the bottle stretch further because a full gallon felt wasteful for one bathroom corner, and diluting it cuts its effectiveness by more than half. I used to wipe the paste off within a few minutes because the smell bothered me, and wiping it early undoes almost all of the work the mixture just did. I used to treat the surface once and consider the job finished, when the truth is, a wall that has held moisture for months needs at least 2 full treatments spaced about a week apart before the spore count underneath actually drops. And I used to spray directly onto fabric or unsealed wood, without testing a small hidden patch first, which on one particular pair of curtains left a faint, pale ring that never came back out. If you are the kind of person who would rather understand what is happening inside your walls than just cover the smell of it for another season, you already know what to do here. Come back for the next one, because what I am going to walk through then is what this same moisture does to the wood framing behind that drywall, long after the black spots on the surface are gone. And that is a problem most people never even know they have, until a contractor finds it for them at a very inconvenient price. Now, the honest limits, because I promised you I would never sell you something I have not tested with my own hands. This paste is for surface and near-surface mould on grout, tile, painted drywall, sealed wood, the kind of colony that has been growing for weeks or a few months in a bathroom, a laundry room, or a kitchen corner near a leak. It is not for mould that has been established for years inside wall cavities you cannot see or reach. And it is not for anyone dealing with a musty smell that keeps returning, no matter what is done to the visible surface, because that is usually a sign of moisture intrusion behind the wall that no surface treatment, mine or anyone else's, will solve. If a professional has already told you that you have extensive hidden mould, or if anyone in your home has a serious respiratory condition, this is not the moment for a homemade fix. And anyone who tells you a $5 bottle solves every mould problem in every house is selling you something, not helping you. There is good money in selling a family a bottle they have to buy again every single month for the rest of their lives. There is no money at all in telling that same family how to make 1-gallon jug and 1 box of laundry powder last an entire year. That is really the whole story behind why this information is hard to find, and why the $8 spray is easy to find on every single shelf in every single store you walk into. This weekend, go find your spot, the one you thought of in the comments earlier. Mix the paste, spray it heavy, and walk away from it for a full hour, no matter how much you want to check on it after 10 minutes. Come back and tell me what came up off that wall when you finally scrubbed it. Type the word thirsty in the comments if you have ever sprayed something on a mould spot and watched it come right back within the month. I want to see how many of us have been fighting the exact same losing fight without knowing why. I told you to remember 1947. That was the year my grandmother wrote the ratio on the back of a feed sack, in pencil, because paper for anything else was too dear to waste on a recipe everyone in the house already knew by heart, and it was only kept for the day one of her daughters would need it in a home of her own, far from that kitchen. I have that feed sack still. The pencil has faded almost to nothing on one corner, but the ratio is still legible. 2 tablespoons to 2 cups to a half cup. The same ratio I just gave you, unchanged for close to 80 years. Because water and vinegar and borax have never needed updating the way a marketing label does every few seasons. Waste nothing. And remember, the people who built this country with their hands understood their own walls better than we understand ours. And most of what they knew never once came in a bottle with a price tag on it.